In this video, I'm going to teach you what is CVP and how to calculate the profit or loss, in management accounting. So our main focus here is no longer financial accounting. We are going to talk about management accounting. How to calculate the profit or loss when it comes to management accounting. So what is CVP? So CVP means cost volume profit. So cost volume profit analysis is to look at the relationship between the revenue, expenses, and the profit. So it can be used to see how changes in revenue and expenses affect the company's profit. So when it comes to income statement format in management accounting, income statement format for management accounting is different from the income statement format in financial accounting. So in management accounting, we will always start with revenue, and your revenue will equals to your selling price times by your quantity sold. So revenue equals to your selling price. How much is your selling price per unit? And then you have to times with the quantity that you have sold. And after revenue, you need to minus off your variable expenses. After revenue, you have to minus off your variable expenses. And your variable expenses will be equals to your variable expenses per unit times by your quantity sold. So for revenue is selling price times by quantity. When it comes to variable expenses, you have to take your variable expenses times by your quantity as well. Variable expenses per unit times by quantity. So revenue minus variable expenses, you will get contribution margin. So revenue less variable expenses equals to contribution margin. You need to remember this because we are going to use this a lot of time, throughout this chapter. So revenue minus variable expenses, you will get contribution margin. So after you get your contribution margin, you need to minus off your fixed expenses. You have to minus off your fixed expense. And the fixed expense normally will be stated in your questions. You have to add it up. Once you get your contribution margin minus your fixed expense, you will get your profit. So your profit equals to contribution margin minus fixed expense. So very simple. So you know that contribution margin equals to sales revenue minus variable expenses, and profit equals to contribution margin minus fixed expenses. Hence your profit will equals to, bring this in. So contribution margin equals to sales minus variable expenses. So you have to minus off your fixed expenses. So basically your profit equals to sales minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses. So if you rearrange the formula, you will get this. So this is how you calculate your profit in management accounting. It's much more easier than the financial accounting part. So this is the second learning outcome that I've gone through, income statement for management accounting. Now the third thing I want to teach you is contribution margin. So what is contribution margin? So contribution margin is the revenue which is available after you deduct your variable expenses. So basically contribution margin equals to revenue minus variable expenses. And this contribution margin here is to cover the fixed expense of a business. So it's to cover the fixed expense of a business. So contribution margin is the revenue available after deducting the variable expenses to cover your fixed expense of a business. For example, if let's say the selling price for one unit is $1, and your variable expense is 60 cents. So $1 minus 60 cents, you will get 40 cents. So this 40 cents is the contribution margin for one particular unit. So in this example, there is 40 cents available to cover your fixed expenses. So contribution margin can be used in many CVP procedures. So you must remember this formula. This formula is very, very important because you are going to use it in you are going to use it a lot of time. You are going to use it a lot of time in CVP analysis. Okay. And the next one that I want to teach you is contribution margin ratio. Contribution margin ratio is very simple. You just put in the formula. This formula will be given in your specification booklet. Okay. So contribution margin ratio equals to contribution margin for 1 unit, contribution margin per unit divided by selling price per unit, and not to forget to times by 100. Okay. So if this is your question over here, selling price equals to 10 bucks. Okay. Variable expense per unit is 4 bucks. So your contribution margin equals to selling price minus variable expense, which is equals to 10 minus 4, which is equal to 6. So your contribution margin per unit is 6. Okay. So they ask you to calculate the contribution margin ratio. So contribution margin ratio equals to CM per unit divided by selling price per unit. Okay. So your CM per unit, you already calculated over here, 6 ringgit, $6. Okay. Contribution margin equals to selling price minus variable expenses. You must remember this, as I mentioned just now, you are going to use this formula quite often. Okay. So CM per unit equals to $6, which is 10 minus 4. Okay. And your selling price is $10. Where do you get your selling price? It's over here. So selling price, $10. Then you have to times with 100. Okay. So your contribution margin ratio equals to 6 divided by 10 times by 100. So this will be 60%. Okay. Or you can show it in decimal places, 0.6. Okay. So there are two ways of interpreting this. Okay. You can either show it in percentage or you can show it in decimals. Okay. Now next one, I'm going to teach you how to calculate the profit. This one is the same as bullet point number 2 just now. Okay. These two are the same. Okay. Bullet point number 2 and bullet point number 5 will be the same. How to calculate profit? Profit for management accounting, you need to take your revenue minus your variable expenses. You will get your contribution margin. Okay. So this equals to contribution margin. Okay. Then after that, you take your contribution margin minus off your fixed expenses. You will get your profit. Okay. So at the end of the day, okay, your profit equals to revenue minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses. So basically, revenue minus off all your expenses, you will get your profit. Okay. So profit equals to revenue minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses. Simple as that. Okay. Now, sometimes, okay, the company needs to have will have a profit target. Profit target means a profit target is the amount of profit that the business want to achieve. Okay. I mean, profit target is the amount of profit that the business set for itself to achieve. Okay. So there are three ways of calculating it. There are three methods. Method number 1, method number 2, and method number 3. Okay. So the first method, you can calculate your forecast revenue in sales dollars by looking at the total variable expenses. Okay. Your total revenue in sales dollars, your forecast revenue in sales dollars equals to total variable expenses plus total fixed expenses plus total net profit. So how we get this formula is very simple. Just now I told you that profit equals to revenue minus fixed expenses, revenue minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses. Okay. So if I have a target profit over here, okay, I need to have a target revenue as well. Okay. So if I rearrange this formula, your target revenue, which is in dollars, okay, your target revenue will be in dollars, equals to, if I rearrange this formula, I will get TR equals to, these two items I need to move to the other side of the equation. So TR equals to target profit plus variable expenses plus fixed expenses. Okay, and then you will get the same formula as this. This is how this formula derive. This is how we derive the method 1 formula. Okay, this is how we come up with method 1 formula. Okay, and the second way is to use your contribution margin ratio. So if let's say the question gives you contribution margin ratio, this is the formula that you need to use. Forecast revenue equals to fixed expenses plus target net profit divided by contribution margin ratio. Okay, so this is the second formula that you can use. If the question gives you contribution margin ratio, they give you the total fixed expense, your target net profit, you can calculate your forecast revenue based on this particular formula. Okay, and next one will be the forecast target revenue in units. Okay, in units is different from the previous two, because the previous two methods is actually in sales dollars, but method 3 is actually in units. Okay, so how to get this forecast target revenue in units? Okay, you have to take your fixed expenses plus your target net profit divided by contribution margin per unit. Okay, so at the end of the day, you will calculate how many units, okay, you need to sell in order to achieve this target revenue. Okay, so if let's say my forecast target revenue in units equals to 1,000 units, which means that in order to achieve this target profit, I need to sell at least 1,000 units of goods. Okay, so these three methods is something we have over here. Okay, not all methods, not all formula is given in your specification booklet. In your specification booklet, they only give you these two formula: forecast revenue in sales dollars and forecast target revenue in units. Okay, so if you refer back to your specification booklet, okay, so this is your specification booklet, page number 5 for 2018 specification booklet. They only give you this formula. Okay, forecast revenue in sales dollars equals to total variable cost plus total fixed cost plus target profit. Okay, and they give you the formula for forecast target revenue in units, which is this particular formula that we have over here. So they only give method 1 and method 3 formula, okay, in your specification booklet. Okay, so if you look into this example over here, we will try one of the questions over here. Okay, so Precision Business Machines has supplied you with the following details. So you have fixed expenses. Okay, your fixed cost equals to 22,000 for 1 month. Okay, and your target profit equals to 5,000 for 1 month. Okay, and your contribution margin ratio, your CM ratio, equals to 0.6. So they ask you to calculate the dollar value of sales. So they ask you to calculate your forecast revenue in dollars. Okay, so if you look at the formula just now, okay, you have contribution margin ratio, you have target profit, you have fixed expenses. If you look into these three formulas, the only formula that you can use is method number 2. Okay, so you are going to use this formula. So total fixed expense plus target net profit, for total fixed expense plus target net profit divided by contribution margin ratio per unit. Okay, you will get 22,000 plus your target profit 5,000 divided by your contribution margin ratio 0.6. So altogether you will get 22,000 plus 5,000, which is 27,000, divided by 0.6, you will get 45,000. Okay, $45,000, which means that in order to achieve this target profit of 5,000, I need to make a sales of 45,000. Okay, so this is how you do example number 1. Okay, so if you look into example number 2, you are going to look at what are the things that you have over here. Okay, for example number 2, they give you your total variable expenses. Okay, total variable expenses 41,000, total fixed expenses 17,000, and your target profit is 9,000. As you know, profit equals to revenue minus variable costs minus fixed costs. Hence, your sales, okay, they ask you to calculate the dollar value of sales that require. So your sales equals to, you move everything, okay, you move everything, your fixed costs and variable costs to the other side of the equation. So profit, revenue equals to profit plus variable cost plus fixed cost. Okay, hence you will get this formula. So sales equals to variable expense plus fixed expense plus target profit. So your variable expense is 41,000. Okay, fixed expense is 17,000, and your target profit will be 9,000. Okay, so total sales that you need to achieve is 41 plus 17 plus 9, which is equal to 67,000. Which means that in order to achieve a target profit of 9,000, I need to make a sales of $67,000. Okay, I need to make a sales of $67,000. Okay, so this is how you calculate the target sales. Okay,